Welcome to May's webinar on JDA 2. My name is Ben Stocks. I'm an account manager here at New Dawn. I'm sure I've worked with most of you who's viewing this. I want to thank you for your time. I know that you guys are all busy, so thanks a lot, and I hope that this will enlighten you and help you get some motivation to try JDA 2 out on your own and expand those waters. I wanted to do this webinar first off because GhostFill is going away in our JustWare 5.9 release, which will be sometime in the summer of 2013, as you saw in your email. I also wanted to show you how easy it is to actually convert your GhostFill documents into JDA 2 documents, and how easy it is to use JDA 2 compared to GhostFill. So those are kind of my objectives with this webinar. I do want to start out also by answering a couple questions I'm sure will be asked. The price per license for a JDA 2 developer is $375 per license. If you do have GhostFill developer licenses, those do get converted over, so you don't have to pay for anything. So if you do have a GhostFill developer license and are able to create GhostFill documents, you can use those for JDA 2 licenses with no cost. We do offer JDA 2 training as well. If you are interested in that, please contact either myself, Jeremy Gledhill, or Jessica Cottle, and we'll be able to assist you with getting something set up for training and discuss the details with you. If you don't know our direct line, they will be posted at the end of this webinar, and also you can always call into support and just ask for one of us, and that extension is 2. So let's go ahead and get started. If you do have any questions throughout this webinar, please feel free to chat them in. Jeremy and Jessica are standing by with to answer your questions, so feel free to chat with them, and I'll also be in there monitoring the chat as well. So this is JustWare, obviously, that I have up on my screen. In order to open JDA 2, you just scroll down to the utilities and go to JDA 2 editor. Many of you might not have this button, and the reason for that is that you probably don't have a JDA 2 license. So once you purchase that, we will enable this so that you can get into it. And I already have it open, so I'm just going to click on my instance down there. And if you'll notice, this looks a lot like Microsoft Word. We have our ribbons up at the top. We have all the same functionality as Microsoft Word. It's just a JDA 2 editor, and we wanted to do this so that you feel comfortable with it and want to use it. The only difference, if you notice at the left, that's where we bring in our fill points and all of our data sources and everything. So we're going to cover that part right now. We're going to cover the top. We have our File, Edit, Connect To options and help. So File, Control-N will open up a new document. Open, we have From File and From Database. The nice thing about the From File is if you are converting GhostFill documents, or you have a document that you want in JustWare that's already in Word format, you can import that from File, and then all you have to do is put in where you want your fill points at. And I'll discuss what a fill point is in just a little bit. We also have From Database. With JDA 2, you're able to save your documents directly to the database, which helps so that you don't lose your documents, and so that they're always right there convenient for you. And so if you're editing a document, this is when you'd want to use From Database. Package, we have Export and Import. A lot of agencies like to test their documents on a test instance of JustWare, so they'll create them there. And then when they want them imported into their live, they'll import them. So this is where you do that at. You could export from your training and import it into your live. Save, Save As, Close, and Exit are all pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go over those. And the next option we have is Edit. Our Edit Data Source is how we get fill points into our documents or queries. So if I come in here, if you are just barely getting JDA 2 for the first time, you're not going to have any of these over here on the right. Don't panic, just call New Dawn and we will give you the fill points and queries that you need. The next thing I want to cover is Preview Case ID. You want to point this to a case ID, a JustWare case ID, that has all the information that your document needs. So I created this Darth Vader case in JustWare, and its case ID is 12-88. So that's the one that I'm pointed to. The Edit Name ID, you're 99% of the time you're not going to use this. This is if you're creating a document that you look specifically for a name ID. We're not going to go over to Connect to either, because more than likely you're only going to have one instance of JDA2 running. But options, we have remember my username and password and show generation feedback. And I'll show you what this show generation feedback does in just a bit. Help, underneath our help we have our user guide. The user guide for JDA2 is very useful. I suggest that you use this user manual. It's very useful, very dynamic, and it's searchable. And I'll go over that in just a little bit with how easy it is to find stuff in there. So now that we went over our file, edit, connect to options, and help, we can start looking at our field points. We're going to cover all the blocks in this webinar, the for each, the if, and the multi-select. Functions, we're going to go over character casing and date and loops. So character casing, date, and loops in here. Properties, we're going to use the isEmpty property, but that's about it in here. And if you want any more information on any of this, I mean, the abbreviation is obviously going to pull in initials. If you open these up, you can kind of tell what they are. Character casing, you can do lowercase, sentence case, title case, uppercase. We'll cover these a little more in depth, and only the ones that I've discussed. This is basic JDA2, so I don't really want to overwhelm you. The hardest things to grasp today is going to be the for each, the if, and multi-select. So if you notice, these all have drop-downs next to them, the properties, functions, and blocks, but fields and dialog do not. So let me show you how you can get your fields to have a drop-down next to them so that you can insert things like a defendant's name, a case ID, all that kind of good information. So anytime you want something added into your JDA2 template, you're going to come to Edit and Data Source, and then Saved Queries. And if you just read through these canned queries, you can kind of decide what ones you're going to need. If I want a court event pulled in, I can pull in this all court events. If I want a prosecuting attorney pulled in, here's my Addie Pros. Now I'm highlighting these and doing Add to Data Source. And if you want to tell what these queries are going to pull in, you can look right underneath the select and it will tell you. So my case details is going to pull in court number, law number, pros number, case IDs. So you're probably going to use that in most of your documents. So add to data source, and I do have to do these one at a time. Once they're highlighted, I click on the add to data source. As of right now, you can't do multiple, which kind of bums me out, but hopefully someday. So add to data source, my counts, and if you try to do more than one of the same kind, so 2 JW counts, it will tell you that it already exists. We're going to do defendant, and then we're also going to do our VIC-WIT off, so victim witness officer, and our VIC-WIT off contact information. So if you just read through here, you can tell what these are going to pull in just kind of by looking at the names of those. There are ways to do custom queries, and we're not going to cover that today, but if there's something that you need to be pulled in that you can't, as long as it's in JustWare, more than likely you're able to get it into a JDA2 document. So I'm just going to come and pull in my JW all court event dates. And we're just going to work on these one at a time so that I can show you what happens. So preview. This will be my event date, and the event is set for May 16th, 2012 at 11 o'clock a.m. Now, more than likely, this is not the format that you want your event date to be pulled into JustWare. So like I said earlier, we are going to go over the date function, and we're going to do a format date. 100% of the time that you deal with dates in JDA2, you're going to start out with the format date. So the first thing you do is your format date. The second thing you do before the comma inside of the parentheses is the date that you want formatted. In this instance, I want the event date formatted. After the comma is how you format the date. So let's pull up our help guide and see what kind of dates what kind of formats we have for dates. So if I hit Control F for find, I can type in format date, and it searches this whole entire document for format dates. So when I scroll down, You see this option in description, so it will tell you if I do 4 big M's, it will spell out January. If I do a little d, it will do 8. Today's May 9th, so if I want it to say 09, I'd have to do 2 D's, and 4 lowercase y's will do 2004. So that was found in the JDA 2 help guide. And now let's go and implement it in here. I just want it to say May 9, 2012. So now when I preview, you'll notice that the date is pulled back exactly how I want it, May 16th, 2012 for my event date. And I keep getting the event date and current date mixed up. So if you wanted to do a current date, instead of the JW all court events, remember you always do format date. Then before the comma inside of the parentheses, you do the date that you want formatted. I would just change that to current date. And now it's going to pull in the May 9th, 2012. So remember, whenever you're dealing with a date inside JustWare, you want to start it out with the format date. This is the Addie pros. I just want their full name brought in. And we're going to do 2 this time because I also want to bring in my court number. So when I preview this, the first thing it's going to show is the active prosecuting attorney. And the second thing it shows is the court number. So there's my court number. Here's my prosecuting attorney. To get these into my documents, into my JDA 2 document, I have 2 options. I can highlight what I want brought in and click on this insert fill point, or I can just drag and drop into here. My preferred method is the insert fill point because then I put my cursor wherever I want and insert the fill point, and I know that's where it's going to go. Sometimes I struggle with the drag and drop. What am I going to do, huh? So there's the JW case details. On the count, I want the statute description. Now when I preview this, I'm going to have an option because there's more than one count on the case. I have a charge 1 of drunkenness and a charge 2 of indecent exposure. Darth Vader just can't control himself when he gets tipsy. So here's what it looks like. It just pulls in drunkenness. That's my statute description. Now I have a couple options if I want it to be pulled in. If I don't want to select a charge, I just want it to be pulled in. I want all my charges pulled in. The first option I'm going to discuss is loops. The first loop is a CCA, which stands for comma, comma, and. So if you have 3 charges, it's going to say charge 1, charge 2, charge 1, comma, charge 2, comma, and charge 3. So I want my statute description. And then I'm also going to do a HR, which stands for hard return loop. And this will just put a hard return in between all of your counts. So once again, inside of the parentheses is where you want to put it. If you notice up here, I put this in between the parentheses. Then I'm going to put it in the parentheses down here as well. And when we preview this, the top one's going to be the comma, comma, and the bottom 2 are going to be the hard return. So here's my drunkenness and indecent exposure, and then here's my hard return drunkenness and indecent exposure. But say you're doing a document and you want like the count number brought in, the statute description, the statute code, all that kind of good stuff. Well, if we do a CCA, it's going to group them all together, so all the statute descriptions and all the count numbers. So what we need to do now is explore our blocks. So the first block we're going to discuss is our for each block. So if you'll notice on each of these blocks, they all have a beginning and an end. So for each, and for each, if, and if, multi-select, and multi-select. So in the for each, we're going to do an insert fill point. And one thing you have to remember with your for each is that you do have to do a variable in order for this to work. So a variable can do anything. Usually the variable I use is row. For this instance, we'll just do charge, since we're pulling in charge. And this can be anything. It can be a letter, it can be a number, anything that you can think of. And this is just a variable. So anything you want right there. Then the next word you have to type is in. For each charge, in. And then you have to say what fill points you want this to loop through. And this one, for this instance, is going to be JW underscore count. I like to do title case just to make sure that it looks good. And then you can decide. So I want count, and then I want the count number. And notice how I just typed in count. And then after that, I want the statute description. Actually, we'll do statute combined. And when I preview this, it's still just radio buttons because I messed up. And it will tell me in this document that I messed up. Hey, you're missing your end for each. Remember how I was going through those blocks and saying for each one there's a beginning and an end? When you're finished with any of those, you have to remember to put the end for in there. So there's my end for each. And now when I preview this, you'll notice I don't get a pop-up box. It just brings in count 1 of drunkenness count and count 2 of 1832. So these blocks are probably the most difficult thing I'm going to cover today. You just have to keep in mind that it does take a little bit to get, but once you get it, they're very beneficial to use in your documents. So there's our for each. And the next item that I want to discuss is a multi-select. So when you're doing your subpoenas, you probably don't want to go into the filing cabinet and do 5 different subpoenas for all the victims, witness, and officers in your case. So let me show you how we can do a multi-select so that it will show you everybody in the case. You can multi-select different people. So we're going to do the multi-select. Once again, you have to do your variable. For this one, I'm just going to do RowIn. RowIn, not RowIn. RowIn. So RowIn. And then you have to type in exactly what you want. So this fill point is going to be the JW Vic Wit off because I want it to pull back all my victim, witnesses, and officers. And then you put what you want it to bring in. So for this, I'm just going to do their full name. And then I have to end this with an end multi-select because all of your blocks have to end with an end, a beginning and an end. I'm going to select both of them, and you'll notice it pulls in both of their names. So here's Angela M. Slayer and Yoda. So now I'm going to take this multi-select a little bit further. And we're also going to bring in the JW Vic Wit off addresses. But if an address doesn't exist, I want to make it so that it brings something up saying, hey, this address doesn't exist, there's not an address on file. So to do that, we need to do an if. So I'm going to start this out with an if. Now, if you do not need a variable, so I don't need a row, a charge, an A, a B, a C, or anything. I can just say what I want. So if this address, the JW Vic Wit off address, and then we're going to use that field that I talked about earlier, is empty, and I'm just going to type it in. So after this, you put a dot, is empty, then you say what you want it to do. No address on file is what I want it to say. Then you do your else. So we've taken care of if an address isn't on file. Now we need to take care if the address is on file. So we're going to do address, city, comma, because you have to put the comma in between the city and state code, so Utah would be UT, and then a zip. And I need to end my end if, I need to end my if, and I need to end my multi-select. So here's my end if, and here's my end multi-select. So remember, a block has a beginning and an end. You just have to make sure that you do that to them in order for them to work. So here's Angela, and here's Yoda. And if you'll notice, for Angela, she doesn't have an address on file. Yoda's address is the swamp in Dagobah, Utah. So I do have a document already created that I want to share with you, just so that you can kind of see how this works. I'm going to open from my database because it's already stored in there. And we're going to do the webinar document. So far we've covered our for each, our if, our multi-select. We've covered how to bring fields into your documents. And let's just kind of look through this document so that we can see what it's doing. Here's my multi-select. So it's going to go through all the victim, witnesses, and officers. Here's the address example that I just did. So here's my if, here's my else, and here's my end if. If you'll notice, we don't have an end multi-select up here because I wanted to do this for the whole document. We have an elected official up here, our court number, our defendant. If you'll notice, I put uppercase before the defendant's full name because I want his entire name to be uppercase for this document. Then here's a for each, so we want it to go throughout our charges. Here's my end for each. Here is a day format. Here's another format. Notice how they all start out with format dates because they're dates. And then once again we have our elected officials. So let's preview this. And I have put some mistakes in here once again just so that you can see the show generation feedback. So if you'll notice, the first thing it says is missing an end multi-select. So remember beginning and end for each one. And also that top field point, elected official, is not being pulled in. We also have an error here on this date. So the date's not being pulled in right. It's saying, hey, you're missing an opening parentheses. And if I look at this, I notice that there's one parentheses up front and two at the back. So I have to get rid of one at the back. This date was pulled in right. And I am missing that end multi-select. So let's go and fix those. So I'm going to take a parenthesis out there. I'm going to go and put my end multi-select in. We'll put it down here. And then I'm also going to show you how to add in an elected official. So to do that, you go into JustWare, Code Tables, Application Parameters, and then you add a new row. And you type in elected, let me turn my caps lock off, elected space official. So Jessica Q. Cottle is our elected official. And the nice thing, and the reason why I suggest that you do your documents this way, is because there is always a possibility that your DA or public defender or someone is not going to be elected again. So instead of going through all of your documents and changing their names that you hard-coded in there, you can just go there and change it, and it will do it for all of your documents as long as you use this field point, the elected official. So now when we preview, we shouldn't have any errors. I'm going to select Angela and Yoda, and everything that's highlighted is a field point that's being pulled in. So here's my Angela M. Saylor. She does not have an address. Now our elected official is showing up. Our court number, here's the judge, here's the victim, all in caps. Our prosecuting attorney, here's charge 1, it's a second-degree felony. Here's charge 2, it's a second-degree felony. Here is my event. Here's the day the event's going to be. Notice the format, 16th day of May. When you're doing it this way, it's a capital D. You have to type in day of, 4 capital M's, comma, and then Y, 4 Y's. Here's the time, and here is today's date with our elected official. Now if I scroll down, the next one is going to be to Yoda. He does have an address on file, so it pulled it in. Here's my elected official, and then here's all the other field points. So like I said earlier, I know that the blocks are a little difficult to grasp. I hope that with this webinar it gave you enough to at least mess around with and think about how you can convert your JDA 2 documents. I hope that we hear from you guys with some questions and some interest in possibly going forward with converting your ghost field documents or getting some JDA 2 training so that you can do it yourselves, or just to create your own documents and edit them. The power would be in your hands then. You wouldn't have to wait on Newdon. So if you do have questions, we will stay on and chat for about 5 to 10 more minutes. And we do appreciate your time. Once again, my name is Ben Stocks. We also have Jessica Cottle and Jeremy Gledhill. Here's our contact information if you feel like you need to talk with any of us about anything. We'd love to hear from you, and we do hope that you realize how easy JDA 2 is and that you're excited to start using it. Thanks for your time.